Welcome back to Midnight Delight, where nightmares come to play. Tonight we delve into the deep heart of the Pine Barrens, a place shrouded in mystery and fear. These stories will take you on a chilling journey where the legend of the Jersey Devil comes to life. Gather around, turn off the lights, and prepare yourself for a night of spine-tingling terror. Let's begin. I remember that night vividly, the night when my curiosity got the best of me. It was a chilly October evening, and the dense fog had rolled in over the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. My friends had dared me to spend the night in the woods, a place notorious for eerie tales and spine-chilling encounters. They laughed and called me crazy, but I was determined to prove them wrong. A flashlight, a backpack filled with essentials, and a sturdy tent is all I took with me. I ventured deep into the forest. The further I walked, the quieter it became. The sounds of civilization faded into the distance. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by my own footsteps. I set up camp in a small clearing, the trees looming overhead. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows that danced and twisted in the dark. As the night grew darker, the temperature dropped, and I huddled closer to the fire for warmth. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Hours passed, and the forest seemed to come alive with whispers. I told myself it was just the wind, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night, echoing through the trees. It was unlike anything I had ever heard. Half human, half beast, it sounded like. My heart raced as I fumbled for my flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. I saw movement in the shadows, a grotesque figure lurking just beyond the reach of the light. It was tall and thin, with glowing red eyes that seemed to burn into my soul. Its wings were leathery and tattered, reminiscent of a bat, and its hoof clattered on the ground as it moved. I knew instantly what it was. It was the Jersey Devil. I was frozen with fear, unable to tear my eyes away from the creature. It let out another screech, this time louder and more menacing. I stumbled backwards, tripping over a root and falling hard onto the ground. The flashlight rolled out of my hand, plunging me into darkness. I could hear the creature getting closer, its breath ragged and heavy. Scrambling to my feet, I grabbed the flashlight and bolted towards my tent. My mind raced with thoughts of escape, but the dense forest offered no clear path. I could hear the Jersey Devil behind me, its wings flapping and branches snapping under its hooves. I dove into the tent, zipping it up as if the flimsy barrier could protect me. The creature circled my tent, its growl sending shivers down my spine. I held my breath, praying it would lose interest and leave, but the nightmare was just beginning. The Jersey Devil clawed at the tent, its sharp talons tearing through the fabric. I had no choice, I had to run. Grabbing my backpack, I burst out the tent and sprinted into the woods. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I had to get away. The creature was relentless, its pursuit unyielding. My lungs burned and my legs ached, but I couldn't stop, not if I wanted to survive. The forest was a maze, each tree looking the same in the dim light of my flashlight. I stumbled and fell more times than I could count, my clothes torn and my skin scratched. The Jersey Devil's screech echoed around me, a constant reminder of the horror chasing me. I dared not look back, fearing that seeing it would sap the last of my strength. Just when I thought I couldn't go any further, I saw a faint light in the distance. It was a cabin, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. I summoned the last of my energy and sprinted towards it, the promise of safety urging me on. I burst through the door, slamming it shut behind me. Inside, an old man sat by the fire, his eyes widening in surprise at my sudden entrance. I quickly explained what had happened, my words tumbling over each other in my panic. He nodded gravely, his face lined with worry. "You've encountered the Jersey Devil," he said, his voice trembling. "It doesn't usually venture this close to people. You must have disturbed something." We barricaded the door and windows, hoping the creature wouldn't be able to get in. The old man handed me a shotgun, and we waited, the tension thick in the air. Outside, the Jersey Devil's screech grew louder, more desperate. It circled the cabin, its wings beating against the walls. Suddenly, the creature launched itself at the door, its claws tearing at the wood. The old man and I fired shot after shot, the deafening blasts filling the small space. The Jersey Devil let out a final, blood-curdling scream before retreating into the night. Silence fell, broken only by our ragged breaths. We waited until dawn, too afraid to sleep. When the first light of day seeped through the cracks in the walls, we cautiously stepped outside. There was no sign of the creature, but the damage it had done was evident. Deep claw marks marred the cabin's exterior, and the ground was littered with feathers and broken branches. The old man offered to guide me back to civilization, and I gladly accepted. As we walked, he told me more about the legend of the Jersey Devil, how it was born from a curse and had haunted the Pine Barrens for centuries. I listened, my mind still reeling from the night's events. We eventually reached the edge of the forest, and I thanked the old man for his help. As I made my way back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. The Jersey Devil was out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. I never went back to the Pine Barrens, and I never spoke of that night again. But every now and then, when the wind howls and the night is eerily quiet, I remember those glowing red eyes and the terror that gripped my soul. The Jersey Devil is real, and it's a nightmare I will never forget. It was supposed to be a night of fun and harmless scares. My friends and I had just graduated high school, and we were eager to celebrate our freedom before heading off to college. The idea to venture into the Pine Barrens came from Josh, the self-proclaimed thrill seeker of our group. He suggested we spend the night in the forest, hunting for the legendary Jersey Devil. We laughed it off as a joke, but the more we talked about it, the more it seemed like an exciting challenge. Our group consisted of 6: Josh, Emily, Sarah, Mark, David, and myself, Alex. Armed with flashlights, sleeping bags, and enough snacks to last the night, we piled into Josh's old van and headed towards the Pine Barrens. The sun was setting as we reached the edge of the forest, casting long shadows that seemed to beckon us into the unknown. We set up a camp in a small clearing, the trees surrounding us like a dark, impenetrable wall. As the fire crackled and the night grew darker, the atmosphere shifted from excitement to unease. The stories of the Jersey Devil began to feel more real in the oppressive silence of the forest. "Let's split up and explore," Josh suggested, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "We'll cover more ground that way." Emily and Mark paired up, while Sarah and David decided to stick together. That left Josh and me. We grabbed our flashlights and ventured into the woods, the beams of light cutting through the thick darkness. The further we walked, the quieter it became, the only sound being the crunch of leaves under our feet. "Do you think we'll actually see anything?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Josh shrugged. "Who knows? But wouldn't it be awesome if we did?" We wandered deeper into the forest, the trees growing denser and the air colder. Suddenly, we heard a rustling sound to our right. We froze, straining to see what had caused it. My heart pounded in its chest as we cautiously approached the source of the noise. Out of nowhere, a figure darted across our path, moving too fast to be human. Josh and I stumbled back, our flashlights shaking. The figure stopped just ahead, and in the dim light, we saw it. A tall creature with glowing red eyes and leathery wings. "Oh my God," Josh whispered. "It's real." The Jersey Devil let out a piercing scream, the sound echoing through the trees. We turned and ran, our fear driving us back towards the camp. As we burst into the clearing, we found Emily and Mark already there, their faces pale with terror. "We saw it too," Emily exclaimed, her voice trembling. "We need to find Sarah and David and get out of here." We grabbed our gear and hurried back into the forest, calling out for our friends. The darkness seemed to close in around us, the air heavy with dread. After what felt like an eternity, we heard Sarah scream. We followed the sound, our flashlights revealing a horrific sight. David lay on the ground, unconscious, with deep claw marks across his chest. Sarah was beside him, sobbing and shaking. "It attacked us," she cried. "It came out of nowhere and attacked us." We helped David to his feet, his face contorted in pain. "We need to get out of here," he gasped. "It's not safe." Supporting David, we made our way back to the van. The forest was eerily silent, the sense of being watched growing stronger with each step. As we reached the clearing, the Jersey Devil appeared again, its red eyes burning with fury. The creature stood between us and the van, its wings spread wide and its claws gleaming in the moonlight. We froze, paralyzed by fear. The Jersey Devil let out another ear-piercing scream, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. We had to get past it if we wanted to survive. "Run!" Josh shouted, pushing us forward. We bolted towards the van, our footsteps pounding on the ground. The creature lunged at us, its claws swiping through the air. I felt a sharp pain in my arm as one of its talons grazed me, but I kept running, fueled by sheer terror. We reached the van and threw the doors open, piling inside as fast as we could. Josh fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. The Jersey Devil slammed into the side of the van, its claws raking across the metal. The sound was deafening, and I thought for sure it would break through. Finally, the engine roared to life, and Josh floored the gas pedal. The van lurched forward, tires spinning in the dirt. We sped down the narrow forest road, the creature chasing us, its wings flapping furiously. It let out one final scream before disappearing into the darkness behind us. We drove for what felt like hours, none of us speaking, too shocked and terrified to process what had just happened. When we finally reached the safety of the main road, we pulled over, our bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. David was in bad shape, his wounds bleeding heavily. We used our shirts to bandage him as best as we could and headed straight for the nearest hospital. The ride was silent, each of us lost in our thoughts. The image of the Jersey Devil burned into our minds. At the hospital, the doctors treated David's wounds and assured us he would be okay. We sat in the waiting room, the reality of our encounter sinking in. The Jersey Devil was real, and we had barely escaped with our lives. In the days that followed, we couldn't stop talking about what had happened. The experience had bonded us in a way nothing else could. We decided to keep our story to ourselves, knowing that no one would believe us. But we knew the truth, and the scars we bore, both physical and emotional, were a constant reminder of that night. The Pine Barrens held secrets darker than we could ever have imagined, and we had come face to face with one of its most terrifying legends. The Jersey Devil was out there, waiting in the shadows, and we knew we would never forget the night we dared to seek it out. I had always been fascinated by cryptids and the paranormal, so when I got the chance to investigate the Pine Barrens, home of the infamous Jersey Devil, I jumped at the opportunity. Armed with my camera, a map, and a sense of adventure, I set off into the dense woods on a crisp autumn morning. The Pine Barrens were eerily beautiful, the towering trees casting long shadows over the forest floor. The air was cool and still. The only sounds were the occasional call of a distant bird. As I ventured deeper into the forest, the feeling of isolation grew, and the sense of foreboding settled over me. After hours of trekking, I reached a clearing that I had marked on my map, a place where sightings of the Jersey Devil had been reported. I set up my camp and began exploring the area, my camera ready to capture any sign of the elusive creature. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting an orange glow over the landscape, and the shadows grew longer. As night fell, the forest seemed to come alive with sounds. The chirping of crickets, the hoot of an owl, and the distant rustle of underbrush filled the air. I sat by my campfire, reviewing the footage I had taken earlier, when I heard it, a high-pitched, blood-curdling scream that echoed through the trees. My heart raced as I grabbed my flashlight and camera, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. The scream came again, closer this time. It was unlike anything I had ever heard, a mixture of animalistic rage and human agony. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized I was not alone. I followed the sound, my flashlight beam cutting through the inky blackness. I stumbled upon a trail of broken branches and disturbed undergrowth, signs that something large had passed through. The screams grew louder and more frequent, guiding me deeper into the woods. My adrenaline was pumping, but so was my fear. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but my curiosity pushed me forward. Suddenly, I saw it, a shadowy figure moving through the trees. It was tall and gaunt, with glowing red eyes that pierced the darkness. Its wings were outstretched, casting a terrifying silhouette against the moonlit sky. My heart pounded in my chest as I raised my camera, capturing the first clear footage of the Jersey Devil. The creature turned towards me, its eyes locking onto mine. It let out another ear-splitting scream, and I felt a surge of primal fear. I backed away slowly, not daring to take my eyes off of it. But as I did, I tripped over a root and fell hard to the ground. My flashlight rolled away, plunging me into darkness. I scrambled to my feet, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The Jersey Devil was nowhere to be seen, but I could feel its presence, lurking just beyond the edge of the light. I grabbed my flashlight and bolted back towards my camp, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. I reached the clearing, panting and exhausted. The fire had died down, casting long shadows that seemed to dance and flicker in the dim light. I hurriedly packed up my gear, my hands shaking. I knew I had to get out of the forest before the creature found me again. As I started back down the trail, I heard the screams once more, farther away this time. It seemed the Jersey Devil had lost interest in me, at least for now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was just watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. The path back through the Pine Barrens was treacherous at night. The trees seemed to close in around me, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to snare me. My flashlight flickered ominously, casting erratic shadows that played tricks on my eyes. Every rustle in the underbrush, every snap of a twig sent my heart racing. I knew I had to keep moving, but the memory of those glowing red eyes haunted me. The Jersey Devil was real, and it was out there, somewhere in the darkness. My mind raced with thoughts of escape, of finding my way back to safety. but the forest was a maze and I could barely see the trail ahead. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the trees. I froze, my flashlight beam darting in all directions. The sound was followed by a guttural growl, deep and menacing. I turned and ran, barely able to catch my breath. The creature was close, too close. The path twisted and turned, and I stumbled over roots and rocks, barely able to keep my footing. The growls grew louder, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of wings flapping. I risked a glance over my shoulder and saw the dark shape of the Jersey Devil, its eyes glowing like fiery embers in the night. I pushed myself harder, my legs burning with the effort. The forest seemed endless, and I felt a surge of despair. Would I ever escape this nightmare? My flashlight flickered again, threatening to go out entirely. Panic set in as I realized that without it, I would be completely lost in the darkness. Ahead, I saw a faint glimmer of light. It was my only hope. I sprinted towards it, my lungs burning and my heart pounding in my chest. The light grew brighter, and I realized it was the headlights of a car. I burst out of the trees and onto a dirt road, nearly collapsing from exhaustion. A truck was parked on the side of the road, its engine idling. A man stepped out, his expression one of shock and concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, rushing over to help me. I could barely speak, but I managed to gasp out a warning. "The Jersey Devil, it's coming." The man's eyes widened, and he quickly helped me into the truck. He jumped into the driver's seat and floored the gas pedal, the tires kicking up dirt and gravel as we sped away. I looked back and saw the creature emerge from the trees, its wings spread wide and its eyes burning with fury. The truck roared down the road, and the Jersey Devil gave chase. Its powerful wings beat the air, and it let out a deafening screech that seemed to shake the very ground. The truck was faster, and slowly the creature began to fall behind. I watched as it shrank into the distance, finally disappearing into the night. We drove for what felt like hours, neither of us speaking. The man's face was pale, and his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. I could see the fear in his eyes, mirroring my own. Eventually, we reached the edge of the forest, and the man pulled over, turning to look at me. "What the hell happened out there?" he asked, his voice trembling. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I came looking for the Jersey Devil," I said, "and I found it." He shook his head, disbelief and fear etched on his face. "You're lucky to be alive." I nodded, knowing he was right. The Jersey Devil was real, and I had barely escaped with my life. As I stepped out of the truck, I felt a strange mix of relief and lingering terror. I had the footage to prove my encounter, but it came at a cost. I never returned to the Pine Barrens, but the experience stayed with me, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurks in the most unexpected places. The Jersey Devil was out there, waiting, and I knew I would never forget the night I came face to face with the legend itself. Thank you for joining me on this terrifying journey into the Pine Barrens. The legend of the Jersey Devil is one that has haunted many for centuries, and tonight we've come face to face with the darkness that lurks in those ancient woods. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a night of fright with Midnight Delight. Sleep tight, and remember, the Jersey Devil is always watching.